Right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our final session of Georgia Tech's Manufacturing Lunch and Learn lecture series. Today we're gonna do a little bit different, something a little bit different than a lecture. But the first thing I wanna do is introduce myself, GTMI, and then give you a brief introduction for the audience, and then introduce our speaker for today. So my name is Dr. Billy D. Brown. I'm a senior research faculty and education workforce development director with GTMI. GTMI is one of several Georgia Tech interdisciplinary research institutes that focus on manufacturing research, development, and deployment. We help tackle the grand challenges of today's manufacturers and assist partners in moving innovations from the lab to the market. GTMI has a wide variety of facilities and equipment located on main campus for basic research, as well as nearby on 14th Street in our advanced manufacturing pilot facility. GTMI's mission is to identify, scale up, and integrate critical technologies for the new and emerging advanced manufacturing sectors. And say a few more words on AMPF. GTMI's AMPF is the headquarters for the Georgia Artificial Intelligence and Manufacturing, or Georgia AIM project, worth $65 million, funded by the Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration. Georgia AIM is expected to profoundly impact Georgia and the nation's economy through the equitable development and deployment of talent and innovation in artificial intelligence for all manufacturing sectors. So the AMPF, which is the headquarters of Georgia AIM, currently has state-of-the-art equipment in metal additive and hybrid manufacturing, and is now expanding and transforming to a demonstration facility for automated smart factory. Right, so they're incorporating industrial IoT, AI, digital, and robotic manufacturing technology. AMPF is also home to GTMI's Manufacturing 4.0 Consortium, which currently hosts over 25 industry partners and growing. All right, today, hosting the 5th and final lecture for the fall semester of GTMI's Lunch and Learn series. We're in person, we're also streaming online. So we want this session to be very interactive. Today is going to be a little bit different, actually. We're going to have more of a panel discussion today, but we still want your input, your questions and feedback from the speakers today, okay? So online, if you have any feedback, please enter your feedback and questions in the chat. All right. So today I'm pleased to introduce Courtney Walker. And she has colleagues in the panel, and she will introduce those colleagues. But Courtney Walker will discuss balancing AI and business process optimization with a key focus on a company's greatest asset, its people. Right, so Courtney Walker is a Vice President, Commercial Banking Relationship Manager in PNC's Corporate and Institutional Bank with over 17 years of experience in the financial industry. She has an MBA, a concentration in marketing and finance from Florida A&M University, and an international project management certification. She currently serves as a board member for the Georgia chapter of Women in Manufacturing. And she is also a PNC certified women business advocate and co-chair of Women in Business for Georgia. So Courtney, I'm gonna ask you to come up, and while you're doing that, today's presentation, we're going to have Courtney and her colleagues actually discuss a recent study that revealed executive leaders' perspectives on AI and manufacturing. They'll also talk about how leaders may design, implement, and refine capabilities that make their organization's offerings more valuable, relationships more effective, and operations more sustainable. So Courtney, I'll have you come up and introduce the remaining speakers.
So thank you so much for that introduction, and I'm really excited to be here and also offer a slightly different programming style and topic for the group. So thank you to Georgia Tech for having all of us out, and for Belinda, connecting with women in Georgia. Really are excited to have you all participate and share the good news around that. So I'm going to give a quote some food to think about, and then I'm gonna transition into the bios of our panel here today. So just from an existential perspective, right? Science and technology are the keys to both longevity and our demise. Our entire existence on this planet is a double-edged sword. And that was a quote by Rhys Darby. And so we're gonna kind of think about that as we try to make sure that we are, keeping an eye on the prize as we advance in AI and other areas of business. So how do we really get to the sweet spot of taking our inventions of innovation around AI, engineering and manufacturing, and using them without causing detriment to ourselves, our employees, et cetera? Let's get into it. So with us today is Dr. Woodard and McKenzie Baker. I'll start with Dr. Woodard. Let me move that. Dr. Woodard is the founder of Capstone Performance Solutions, Inc. It was established in 2016 with a profound vision to inspire leaders and organizations toward achieving excellence. With a diverse background as a seasoned engineer and HR executive, both, and hear that out, engineer and HR executive. So we will be talking about we will talk about some career pathing and just ways that they have both broadened their horizons. But she is dedicated to delivering innovative solutions to clients seeking to enhance profitability, foster a robust organizational culture, and cultivate transformative leadership. Fun fact, Dr. Woodard also has 2 daughters here at Georgia Tech currently matriculating, and she received herself a Bachelor's of Science in Industrial Engineering from Clemson University, and she holds a Master in Human Resource Development as well. Her doctoral research focused on advancing leaders into strategic talent management practices.
What majors are her daughters?
Pardon, what majors are your daughters?
Oh, my youngest daughter is a 3rd-year biomedical engineering student, and my oldest daughter has a civil engineering degree from Georgia Southern, and she's here now. She just started in the fall working on her master's in construction management here at SIEMENS.
Before assuming a full-time leadership at Capstone, Dr. Woodard notably served as the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Organizational Development at the Board of Regents of the University System of Georgia. During her 8-year tenure in this pivotal role, she spearheaded the design, development, and execution of numerous executive leadership and professional development initiatives benefiting over 40,000 employees. So thank you, Dr. Woodard. Our next panelist is McKenzie Baker. McKenzie is currently the manager of CPQ product management at SIEMENS. Not bad. In her position, she owns the vision, roadmap, and features to CPQ, which are configure, price, and quote functionalities in their Compass system, working with sales and business stakeholders to drive prioritization of Compass enhancements within the business process optimization team at SIEMENS. She joined SIEMENS in 2018 as part of the Engineering Leadership Development Program, during which she held various roles with R&D, manufacturing, and order engineering before completing the program as Russell Electric KB lead for the Compass KB team. During her tenure in support of Russell Electric, she developed the Compass configurators for all 3 product lines. And I should. McKenzie holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Texas A&M University. And you came to Georgia and decided you were never leaving. So we're glad to have you here. One thing that both of these women have in common outside of being women in STEM and manufacturing and having those degrees is that they are also individual and corporate members of Women in Manufacturing, of which I sit on the board. And at your seats, you will see some information around women in manufacturing. We have 33 chapters throughout the US. We have roughly 378 events every year, which include around 5,000 unique event attendees. We have 6 signature events representing over 825 companies. More than 1,700 attendees at the summit, WIM's flagship conference, attend annually. 2 years ago, it was here in Atlanta. And we continue to have increased programming on the board. And in fact, this year or next year in January, Dr. Woodard is going to be presenting the Women's Excellence and Leadership Forum here for us within Women in Manufacturing. So please be on the lookout for that as well. We have a foundation that also provides internship, professional development, and other programming for students such as yourself. Different connecting opportunities with our Coffee and Connections programming. And one of my personal favorites is that we are able to go into all of the large manufacturers around the state of Georgia and the plant tours, which are very informative, exciting, and you get to really meet some key leadership within those organizations. So great opportunity and something to look at. And we are open to everyone, not just women, and having a lot of men involved in our organization as well. So you can go to the website listed on those forms for that. All right, I'm going to get into the questions. Dr. Woodard, as I understand it, you have a keen ability to help see the gaps in what various internal and external stakeholder groups may want and need out of a process or product. This seems like an easy enough concept overall, but when you layer competing interests and the constraints of time, quality, budget, and scope, it really can be quite complicated. How do you set out understanding the needs of your clients in this way as they set to integrate AI within their historical business framework?
Thank you, Courtney, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. The work that I do is really situated within the field of science. So we take a very scientific approach to helping identify gaps. And we have to recognize this is more than just, it's a technical challenge for sure, but it's also an adaptive challenge, a deeply strategic challenge that involves process optimization. It also involves change management, which is what I bring to my clients in the area of organizational development. And when you say gap finder or helping clients to identify the gaps, that's what we do. We help them identify where you are today and where you're trying to go tomorrow. And then what is that gap? And then what technologies are available to help you close that gap? And the first step in that is to really identify your stakeholders, internal and external stakeholders. So we look at customer feedback, suppliers, regulators. We look internally at operations, IT, leadership, individual contributors, all of those layers that impact the operations of an organization. And then we look at the value that they're expecting from processes and products and services. How do they define value? And then how do we incorporate that into the product or process? And so really after identifying those stakeholders and working with them to identify the value, then we began to process map. And to look at where are we adding value in processes. We pull an old tool out of my IE toolbox, engineering toolbox, Mr. Biv, where we're looking for mistakes and rework, bottlenecks, inefficiencies, and variations. And that's where we began to identify those gaps in terms of where you are today, and then what technologies are available to help reduce those mistakes, reduce those bottlenecks, increase those efficiencies. And we began to prioritize those through conversations with leadership, with employees, prioritize those so that we can focus our work on most high impact areas. So those are some of the steps we take to identify the gaps that our clients are.
Awesome. No wonder Georgia Tech has you as an approved executive leadership coach here for that reason, especially with your technical background. McKenzie, what has been your experience with implementing advancements in AI in your business processes? And do you feel these advancements will become more or less detailed or complicated in nature as the business environment continues to adapt?
So good afternoon, and thank you for the question, Courtney. So my business within Siemens focuses on power distribution equipment. So we're implementing AI and improvements to our processes in a lot of different places. Both in our product designs, we're adding AI and machine learning to a lot of our circuit breaker products. So the circuit breakers you might find in your basement, your garage panel, we're making those smarter and being able to detect arcs and to keep your home safe. So there's a lot of AI going on there. With our business processes as well, we're looking at how do we price our products, right? So instead of having a person have to approve every single project that gets quoted and the pricing levels we give our customers, we're training an AI model to make those decisions for a lot of our projects, and then we can just keep the people on the team focused on the really customized platforms that we really need to focus on. And then also in our day-to-day operations with our teams, right? So everyone's wondering, how can we make our teams more efficient, right? How can we take the mundane tasks and kind of deflect that onto something else in an AI model? So things like documenting our procedures and training new team members. We're trying to train AI models for each team, like our customer support organization is working with AI to kind of house all of their documentation for how they do business. And then their new team members are just team members that need to reference documentation can message a chatbot that's specific to that team. So we're looking at AI in a lot of different places. And I think it's going to become more complex because AI is going to get more capabilities, right? But I think our business is going to become simpler by using AI.
Dr. Woodard, you recently attended a Georgia Tech event last week in which we spoke about, and at that presentation, Talta Consulting Services talked about their study, a business study that was focused around surveying 1,300 senior executives across 24 countries in Asia, Latin America, Europe, and North America, such as the Siemens, et cetera. The report includes the result from respondents across 12 main business industry sectors. In it, 70% of executives cited that they were more focused on using AI to spur innovation than on necessarily lowering costs and optimization. Essentially, innovation and change, even despite very positive outcomes, can be uncomfortable and intimidating in college. With any advancement in innovation, you will have your first movers and your late adopters or your laggards, internally and externally, with all of those stakeholders that you mentioned earlier. As a consultant, how do you advise teams to ensure they can maximize a people-first culture while making the necessary changes required to fill those gaps with AI?
Right, so it's important to bring people along. So identifying, first of all, the context in terms of what is a people-centered culture and reaching agreement on that. So when you think about attributes such as transparency, being able to really talk about why the change is needed, what the change will look like for that organization, and then how you anticipate that change will impact those workers, those team members, and then how can you upskill them and reskill them so that they can work alongside or manage AI. So the transparency is important. The inclusion is important, making sure you're bringing them along so that they're actually co-creators of the solution and not just recipients of it. And then to also think about empathy, because change is hard and people don't generally like change. They want to keep doing things the same way that they've been doing. They say, it works for me now. Why do I need to change? We're working with a healthcare company right now that has a new CEO, and we often get called in when there's a new CEO, new vice president for division, and people are resistant to change. And it's really about communication. Talking to there's technology out there that allows you to do sentiment analysis. So we do a lot, we're qualitative researchers, we do a lot of focus groups, interviews, and then we'll run it through AI to see what are people really thinking and what are they feeling, and we'll communicate that back to the stakeholders in the organization. You know, a good old-fashioned in-person conversation is still the most powerful way to show people that you care and to create psychological safety within the organization. So they feel like they're coming along with you as opposed to change being imposed upon them. I think that's really important for us to think about as we're introducing these emerging technologies, because it can be isolating for some employees. So in order to mitigate those concerns and fears, talk to them and find out what their real concerns are, and look at how we're implementing AI in an empathetic way, as well as ethical use of this technology. I can provide you with some examples of how I believe we need to really attend to the human element of the products that we're designing. There was a video that I saw with a person of color who was trying to access entry to a door, but it did not recognize, the sensor did not recognize the darkness of his skin. So they picked up a white piece of paper and put it in front of the sensor, and it opened immediately. So we have to think about more than just ourselves, and that's why it's important to approach this with inclusivity so that we know that everyone is being considered with this technology.
That's great. And, you know, as students, that's definitely something to key in and hone in on, because the data can say we should absolutely do solution A. But if the teams of people that you work with and those people that they have to report to and get consensus with feel like psychologically unsafe in the moment because they don't see themselves in the equation, they haven't been asked or, you know, their skill set and expertise hasn't been provided, you can get a lot of no's on a very correct answer. I've seen it myself within the corporate space, and bridging the two sides of tech and AI advancements as well as the business piece. If you go in with that mindset, can put you leaps and bounds ahead of others out there.
And we can get so enthusiastic about the technology, and that's really great. But when we introduce so much change in an organization all at once, people become really overwhelmed. And what we're seeing right now across all sectors that we're working in is this extreme burnout, stress, overwhelm, anxiety, and that's why there's this revolving door of talent entering and exiting the workforce. And I think we may get into it later on, but there are so many people. In fact, Microsoft and LinkedIn did a survey of 30,000 workers across the globe in February and March of this year. And it showed that 86% of people were thinking about and planning to quit their jobs in 2024. And a lot of that is due to the anxiety, the stress, the overwhelming amount of change. So as leaders, we absolutely have to be sensitive to that so that we're not imposing change upon people, but bringing them along with us by allowing them to be co-creators of solutions.
Great, thank you. McKenzie, what has been your approach to managing people within a technical environment that could be in a constant flux of innovative solution ideation? And how do you manage, because you have a team that you manage as well around that?
Yeah, we try to implement a lot of the things you're saying to the best of our abilities, right? Especially in the infrastructure industry that we work in. The last 4 or 5 years have been absolutely crazy with the EV chargers coming online, just investments in infrastructure in this country. So we've seen an incredible amount of growth, but with that comes a lot of this burnout and just constant change. So it's really difficult. But one thing our leadership team has been really good about is just talking about it and one thing, right? And being empathetic and realizing, hey, we need to take care of our people first. So really just encouraging people to like manage their work, right? Manage the change effectively. But then when it comes to solving new problems and trying to take that novel approach, and you ask the question, why not, right? So there might be some crazy idea, either a customer is requesting a certain solution of us, or just a team member has a new idea. And instead of, being hesitant and scared of it, we say, why not, right? And we talk about, okay, well, what would this take, right? Our business actually took recently a big leap, and we actually built an entirely new factory just because of this one customer's request. And it was a big investment, but it was a big leap of faith, and it's really panned out, right? And so it really took our team and our leadership team saying, hey, we recognize that change is here. It's going to be a constant thing. It's difficult, but let's embrace it and say, why not? And see what we can do with it. And it's been really positive, a lot of change and really difficult sometimes, but it's overall been a really positive thing to embrace it.
How do you feel AI can contribute to some of the data points that you two have discussed on this particular question? Actually providing those solutions that we seek.
Yeah, I think AI can help with collecting feedback, right? And then helping us analyze the data, right? So instead of us collecting all this data and poring over it and trying to discern what the data is saying, AI can help with that, right? It's not the only person that's going to just spit out an answer for you, right? You need to kind of think about it. But I think AI can really help us make those decisions and then kind of give us some options and what we can consider as a business. And really help us plan as well. So if we say, here's a couple of different options, what would the plan look like? Kind of help the team create a structure for that plan. AI has endless opportunities there. Anything to
Yeah.
add?
No, and I mentioned earlier that we use it for analyzing interview data, focus group data. We will come into an organization and help them figure out what the employee concerns are. We'll ask them, how do you see AI benefiting you and solving challenges in your work? And then what are some of your fears, concerns that you may have around it? And we really pay attention to that and feed that information back to the leaders in the organization.
I think you'd mentioned in the planning of this meeting about how, and I don't want to butcher the quote, but how AI knows everything and understands nothing.
That's the quote I heard last week at the conference right here.
Yeah.
And I agree wholeheartedly. And they showed a really fascinating video at the beginning of that. I don't know if you were in there at the time when they showed the video, but it was hilarious, but so true. There was a gentleman who has a smart home. So he was able to speak to activate so many different things. Open the door, turn the coffee maker on, adjust the temperature to 72 degrees, open the door, close the door, play jazz music. And everything was just fine until he went to the dentist later on that day and had a tooth extraction and had gauze in his mouth and he was in pain. So when he returned home, he said, open the door. And it didn't understand what he was trying to say. And so it's pouring down rain. He's in pain and he's standing there trying to activate the door. Open the door. And the door is still closed. And AI is interpreting him incorrectly. Oh, play this kind of music. Open the door. And next door, this woman walks into her house. She uses the key and she turns it and she walks in. How are we designing this technology so that it fits and it works in every situation? And I'm gonna tell you another personal example. We were on vacation and using some technology to operate some things in the room, but we weren't using the dialect of the region. And so my husband, in a humorous way, started using the dialect of the region. And when he did, it worked. Oh, wow, look at that. So are we considering that in our design? Yes.
Yeah, I was curious about if you had some examples you could share about how AI has assisted manufacturers in your companies, maybe on the shop floor, or just some examples of that.
Yeah, I think for us, it's helped in manufacturing, but also on the product design side. So for us, we try to implement something called design thinking, you might have heard of. So it's about really understanding your stakeholder and really thinking through all those different scenarios that they might be thinking and making sure we're solving the problem that we think they're asking for, right? A customer might come to you and say, I need a red t-shirt, but maybe it was the purpose behind why they need that red t-shirt or that piece of equipment that they're really trying to solve the problem. So what they're asking for might not be actually the best way to solve that problem. So really using AI, using other, just interviewing customers, understanding your stakeholders, really kind of peeling the layers back is where you can solve in even better solutions for your customers by really understanding what the problem really is.
And we're working with a mid-sized manufacturer right now that's just starting to utilize AI as a tool within the organization. So they're using it mostly now in the office areas for generating ideas. They may have an idea and they will plug it into one of the AI tools to expand upon that idea. But they're looking to start using it out on the shop floor even more.
And feel free to ask questions. We'll have Q&A at the end as well, but if there's something that's very topical that you want to ask, please do. So simply, who's going to win this war, the bots or the people? Seriously, Dr. Woodard, you mentioned to me that, and then you stated here that there are more people resigning now than during the pandemic for various reasons. On one hand, we can't deny that companies have skills gaps and oftentimes a harder time employing and paying the type of talent they truly need for sustainable innovation through AI. While employees are feeling fearful about loyalty, longevity, and acquiring new skills quickly enough. A lot of the businesses that work with WIM Georgia, that's one of their top discussion points and pain points is that piece. Yet humans, not AI, are expected to remain the competitive differentiator, according to the study of the executives that we mentioned earlier. How do we interject a sense of calm and in the midst of a need to innovate using AI, bring tech into that equation without losing sight on its people?
Right. So I think that actually also goes back to being people first, people centered. There's this big push now for upskilling and reskilling. We know that we formerly were able to buy the talent we needed, or now I think more organizations, and in fact, studies are showing that 80% of companies across the US are now investing more in building that talent within. So making sure that we're providing the skills internally, training around those skills that are really needed so that we can build that talent within, because we're not able to find it in the marketplace. And when we do find it, we're not able to afford it, most likely. And there are opportunities for when there are skills gaps that can't be closed to use bots for those. So those repetitive tasks, tasks that may be dangerous for humans. Our March WIM event earlier this year was held at Kia Motors. And there's one whole section of the shop floor where humans don't even enter, and it's the paint shop. And there are huge bots in there that are lifting the pieces of the car up and flipping them around and painting them. And it took me back to my early engineering days of working in automotive engineering and just looking at the labor intensive task and the dangerous welding and all of that the employees were tasked with. And now to see bots that are able to come in and do that for us, keeping us safer, because I also worked in health and safety for a while. So yes. So there are certainly some positive aspects of how we can utilize it to close those skill gaps that may not be readily available within our workforce, but also making sure that we're providing the training. We know that millennials and Gen Z, they're leaving the workforce if they're not receiving the training and development and education and career pathing that they're seeking. And so that's another way to retain, because once we attract that talent, we want to retain it in the workforce as opposed to having a culture that is not supportive and they're leaving the workplace as soon as they're coming in. There are some employees who come in and by lunchtime, they leave and they never come back. And so we're trying to help them figure out what's going on in their processes, what's going on in their culture, so that they can attract and retain the talent that they're.
Absolutely. McKenzie, give us some color to that statement as well.
Sure. Yeah, we're trying to solve this problem as well. A few years ago, actually, Siemens changed our performance review structure. So we no longer have these yearly performance reviews. We have at least monthly, what we call growth talks with our managers. And that might just sound like a name change, but it's actually a small part of a bigger culture change. So it's really about making sure we're having these constant conversations with managers and employees about, okay, where is this employee now? What do they want to do next? What training can we give them to help them get there? What projects can we put them on that are critical to the business, but can also give them a growth opportunity to kind of stretch into that next thing? So it's always recognizing that no one's job is going to be the same a year from now, right? None of us, they're in your manufacturing, R&D, in the business, all of them are going to be different, right? So how do we, treat that as a positive and really look at how do we make steps and get the training and resources to the employees to make sure they feel ready for that and they feel a part of that change.
Ladies, both of you have taken, to your point there, have taken your respective technical degrees and broadened your career trajectory. I've done that myself. My first job was actually at Dow Chemical, and I was in polyurethanes. So, and somehow I'm a baker. But focusing on the manufacturing space. But, that's a great point while we sit here and discuss these advances in technology and people, and thinking about career pathing in general and how technical degrees can be used in a variety of ways. In short, you've essentially innovated yourselves and your careers. So what does the audience need to know from you and your perspective on how to capitalize on your own personal innovation strategy? Dr. Woodard.
I think it's important to remain open. As engineers, as scientists, we're problem solvers, critical thinking, just being able to remain open to discovery and exploration and never putting those limits on yourself. When I began my career working for a major manufacturer, going through their engineering rotation program, I think that's what set the groundwork for me and my career to be open to change, because in the rotation program, every 6 months, you're going to a different functional area. So I had an opportunity to work in environmental health and safety. I worked as a supply quality engineer. I worked as a manufacturing engineer, and several other shipping and receiving. And so learning and getting a broad scope of the business, this was in the, I'll go ahead and tell you, I worked for GE. So this was during the Jack Welch era, where we had 13 different businesses at the time. And if your business was not number 1 or number 2 in the market, it was potentially sold off. So it was very competitive, and we worked very diligently to train all of our engineers at the time. So I think being open to learning and discovery, and I left working in gas turbine manufacturing, power generation as an engineer, into the automotive industry, which was very different as well in terms of quality standards. And I became one of the lead facilitators of quality standards for all of our suppliers, traveling around the country to audit and train them on our quality standards. And then from there, went into county government as an organizational development leader. And I'll tell you what really sparked my interest in that was my work in engineering, because I was responsible, very much like you, early in my career, for a particular area out on the shop floor. And our productivity was low and I couldn't quite figure it out. And I was pulling out every engineering tool I had learned at Clemson to make sure the parts were at the machines on time and the processes, the standard operating procedures were updated. I was doing all of that and we still weren't reaching our productivity numbers. So I began to spend more time out on the shop floor with second shift and third shift and learn the problem really quickly. The second shift supervisor did not like the third shift supervisor. And so at the end of their shifts, they would pack up their toolboxes, lock them up with all their SOPs and notes from the shift, and they would leave without communicating to the next shift what needed to happen. And so the third shift supervisor would come in and have to start all over, figuring out what had been assembled, what needed to happen. So we were losing time just because they didn't like each other. So the team dynamics created this huge bottleneck in our organization in that particular area of the shop floor. And that's when I started studying team dynamics more, went back to Clemson University, got a master's in human resource development to understand team dynamics even more. So I'm sharing that example with you to say, I never limited myself in terms of where I'm gonna go next. I went to county government and worked in human resource development. And then I went to public higher education, working for the Board of Regents for 8 years. And now as a consultant, I get to work across sectors even more. We have clients in healthcare, nonprofit, state government. We've worked in retail. And so being able to stay open, stay curious about whatever it is you're encountering. My experience working as a human factors engineer has now led me into another industry right now, a product that me and my business partner have a patent on that will be manufactured. We're in the prototype phase right now, but we're going to be manufacturing some smart equipment. So, you know, that is something we're doing today, but I learned it years ago when I worked in ergonomics and human factors engineering. So stay curious, never put limits on yourself, because I believe every moment is preparing us for the next moment. So if I had not been curious when I was working as an engineer, and every subsequent job that I interviewed for, they would tell me, Tina, yes, we're gonna hire you as the organizational development manager because you have an engineering degree and we know you're process oriented and you're a critical thinker. So use your engineering degree, but it can take you anywhere you want to go in the world and do anything that you want to do in just about any sector in which you may want to do it. So stay open, stay curious, and lean into discovering and experiencing the novelty of what you can learn from situations, because you never know what you're going to extract from that and be able to apply to another situation.
Thank you.
I agree with a lot of what you said. For me, I started in a similar rotation program to Dr. Woodard. Rotated through plant environments, R&D environments. I did internships at several manufacturers. What I really found was I have a mechanical engineering degree, but I liked manufacturing. I liked the product development. I liked a lot of different things. So when I was asked, you know, McKenzie, what do you want to be when you grow up kind of thing, I struggled with getting an answer because I was almost afraid to commit to that one thing I said, and that was now written in stone. And if I ever decided to change my mind, I'm screwed. But I learned over time that it's okay for that to change, right? You experience different things, you try out different roles. And if you're introspective and ask yourself what you like and you don't like, you can actually kind of shape your career path as you go, but you need to have something you're aiming at. So I think being open and really recognizing, hey, I like this about this job, I don't like this so much. It can kind of, in working with mentors, you can kind of find your path and really work to figuring out what you want to do. A lot of times I meet with interns or people that are just newly joining the company, and they say, well, how did you go from mechanical engineering to managing a software team, right? I took the basic software classes in college, but I can't say I focused on it specifically. But my software that we build, it is that interface between manufacturing and product design. So me trying out both of those groups and recognizing that I liked things about both, and I liked figuring out, how do we bridge the gap between the two? How do we make our designs more manufacturable? How do we have the manufacturing input at the table when we're designing something? So it's really the software that also prices something. So it just gets me that well-rounded view of the business, and that's how I ended up where I'm at. But it wouldn't have gotten to this point if I hadn't done that introspection and been open to, like you said.
I'm curious with the, I wrote down manufacturing intersects product design. How those business units how do they connect and how do they understand one another's languages, really? Do you have any insight there?
Yeah, we actually, so whenever we try to make things modular where we can. So our equipment, as it gets more complex, we obviously can't just pump this same thing out to meet the customer's needs. Every customer's needs a little bit different for power distribution equipment. So our R&D team works really hard to make it modular, which helps with us having a configuration software. So the customer can go in and say, hey, I have these certain power requirements. Here's what my facility is going to look like. It's a hospital, it's a data center, it's all these facilities have different requirements. So they can insert their requirements into our software, and then the modular design is able to be used in the software to help figure out, okay, how do we design something that will meet this customer's requirements? And then on the manufacturing side, we worked with them, okay, now this is the design, now we have a full bill of material and the time and the operation steps in the manufacturing facility. So it's kind of this one big process that we try to design our products around to make sure we're satisfying the customer needs, but also being efficient where we can on the manufacturing side.
Do the leaders within those two areas often connect?
Yeah, absolutely. We do workshops where the design team is a lot of the design teams actually work in the same facility where the product's manufactured. But if that's not the case, we do workshops regularly at the plant to make sure, people are on the plant floor. Like you said, I found that really valuable in my career, right? When you actually get on the plant floor and see what's happening, it's not what you assume is happening all the time, right? And that was usually a reason for it, right? Usually the manufacturing team has figured out, well, it's easier for us to do it this way, even that's not the way it's designed, but we found it easier. And so being out on the floor, you can really figure out, why are they doing that? And then that makes you a better design engineer if that's what you're working on.
Absolutely. I think all three of us have similar experiences being in executive leadership programs. And I was in finance. I did one at Dow Chemical as well. And one of the key things that I picked up on in all of these different industries is that you have to have internal stakeholders from a 360 holistic approach. And it is very easy to be siloed in just manufacturing or just, whatever space you're in and thinking that because that's the answer. But when you really bridge the geniuses from all of the different business processes, your answer could be different and it could be better.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add is just being curious about what other people are doing, right? You might work in a certain group, but it's like, why do you do it that way? Just genuinely being curious. I like to tell people with my engineering brain, I just generally like, why does that work that way? But if you ask just in your job, in your life and say, why is this person reacting that way? Why are we doing something this way? Why is something designed a certain way? You can learn a lot and then challenge the assumptions you had.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great. I think we're going to end it there. This was some great commentary, and I'd love to get some Q&A either from online or in the room.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want you guys to join in the conversation. Please, I think this is a great opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah, I have a question to Siemens. You mentioned that you implemented AI. For the implementation, did you train your workforce internally or did you hire the external workforce to implement it?
A little bit of both. So a lot of our internal employees are very eager to learn about AI and machine learning. So, it's this kind of really, really cool topic going on in the industry. So lots of that. But in certain situations, we've hired in people, whether they're new college grads that have had more training in school now than we would have a few years ago, or just industry experts. It's kind of been a mixture of both because I think there's value in both.
Okay.
Curious about career opportunities at Siemens, if you know of any, or the process to get an internship. Maybe you could even talk about your journey, of how you got into Siemens, and then maybe making the jump from like manufacturing engineer to editor.
Yeah. So for internship opportunities, I would, check our website for sure. We're a huge company. For my path specifically, a lot of times we're at the college career fairs. I know we go to Georgia Tech every year. So I would definitely take advantage of those opportunities to meet the representatives at the career fair. A lot of times that'll get your application a better look than if you just straight apply online and hope gets looked at, right? Meeting people, making that connection at the career fair is really key, or other events. For my career path, did an internship at another manufacturing company, out in the plant floor a lot, manufacturing engineering. I really loved it, but I wanted to find something that had more of that product design side. So I actually went to my school's career fair, found Siemens, and I was always looking for a company that had these rotational development programs for early career. Because I knew I didn't know what I wanted to do quite yet. And so it's kind of the safety net. I get to try out a lot of different things. So Siemens had that. I really enjoyed my product design internship. And I interviewed at the end of the summer to become part of the full-time program after graduation. So I actually went back to my senior year of school with a job offer, which is great, because I could just focus on my classes and my senior capstone and do all of that. But yeah, and then from there, just being open to opportunities. I was in a manufacturing position when manager of my software team called me at the time and said, hey, you really understand the product and how it's manufactured and our customers. We have this certain project coming up where I need some of that skill set, but then you're going to have to learn this new XYZ skill set on the software side. And I said, well, why not? That sounds really cool. And I appreciate the opportunity, and it's taken me from there. So being open.
Any other questions? Yeah.
First off, thank you guys so much for coming out. I had a quick corollary question based on my colleague in the front. A lot of us are engineers, and you guys have a lot of private sector frontline experience. There's a new political regime coming in. How should we be looking at some of the things that they are saying? So for instance, manufacturing is supposed to be coming back. There are all these different types of measures that are going to be taken to ensure that manufacturing flourishes here. But could you speak about the reality and the tactical realities of these things actually taking place? So what I mean by that is, for example, if you're a commercial bank financing businesses and manufacturing, Treasury is at 5% or 4%. Risk profile manufacturing versus a software company might be, why put that risk out there in a CapEx? So if you give us some, if we're told here at Tech, the private sector, all our research is for the private sector, and they're going to be coming in and engaging with us, but a lot of us do not have an unmitigated view of that in reality.
Okay, that's a great question. And I'll just say.
I have a political discussion, but.
No,
To
not,
answer the
no,
question.
not that, but, I'll just say that, you know, when we look at, risk in lending, whether it's, you know, an engineering software company versus a manufacturer, in your example, they're very different because, people may inherently think, oh, well, that, you know, the manufacturer, they can look at it two ways. It's heavy in CapEx, heavy in, you know, equipment, but that is fully, collateralized at the same time. And some of your IT and other kind of companies, the collateral is more, esoteric in nature. It's accounts receivable. You know, it's, do we have the contracts with Siemens, and do we have a what we call 60 to 90 days or less receivable pool that we can wrap our hands around and collateralize? I would be quite honest, I think banks in general are still trying to understand how to collateralize a lot of the tech and things that are not so tangible with that. So where you know, one may think, oh, that software company is more secure than the CapEx intense manufacturer. There's pros and cons depending on what we're trying to do and what we're trying to lend to. And looking at, you know, everything from the business management, forward thinking ideas around that. So with the changing landscape, I would say right now, nothing has really changed. We are looking at, just like you would analyze any stock, we are looking at the financials. Are the fundamentals there? what working capital is being utilized for. How strong is the collateral? How long has that business been in business? Which a lot of manufacturers have, time on their side with that as well. And they're a going concern entity, more so than some of your tech companies that may be newer. And their product may be more customizable and not so tactile. So it is a art, not a science. Finance is an art, not a science. Two people can come up with completely different financials. And so in my role looking at manufacturing and engineering companies, I pull from some of my background knowledge of knowing and being there in those spaces and trying to demystify that for our credit and underwriting team.
Thank
Did
you.
you all have any other thought there with that?
No.
Okay. I think you had your hand up too, sir.
I did, but I think I can follow up at another time about the question.
You sure? We got a few more minutes.
Okay, yeah, so my question is for Siemens, and I know that earlier y'all were looking into documentation and how how documentation can be used by AI for customer service. Is that really like a pressing problem for y'all at the moment? Do you mind going into it and how the documentation?
Yeah, it's one of them. I was giving you all an example. Each team, I think, has their different challenges, right? For customer support, we have, all this documentation as a business about our products, about how we serve our customers. And so training someone on all those different documents is a big task, right? And expecting them to retain it. So training an AI model to be able to, consolidate all of that information and then someone to be able to ask it a question is a lot more efficient for that team.
Yeah.
For other teams, it's about implementing AI on similar process documentation, but maybe it's something that it's more on that price approval example, right? So it's looking at, okay, what have we historically done here and what maybe should we recommend for the next step? So each team in the business has different use cases for AI.
If you could probably just, have an estimate or a range of like too much or kind of just right or not too much in terms of how much documentation y'all have. Do you have too much documentation, just enough, or too little?
Varies on the team. I can think product documentation, we have a lot, right? Some of our other business processes, especially in this past few years of, the changing environment with our industry, there's probably not enough, right? We've been kind of defining the processes as we go, changing them when we need to, because we try to embrace the change, right? I can think in my team's relatively new. I don't have much documentation about my team's processes. So it's something that we're trying to figure out. Can we use AI to document our processes, right? How do we use AI to kind of fill these gaps, whether it's too much documentation and consolidating it, whether it's creating documentation, or AI has got some really powerful capabilities there. So it depends on the team within our business.
Thank you.
Yes.
I guess, so talking about all the things that AI is good at and can help with, I think in research publications, I've been seeing a lot of people, everyone's so excited about AI, they'll apply it to absolutely everything, even in ways that may be silly, you can't get a lot out of. And so I'm wondering if that's something you guys have seen in the industry.
I think it's good, talks about a lot. It does have a lot of potential. And I think the only way we're gonna make it more powerful is by continuing to look at it and see what it can do. I mean, yes, I think it's a little over talked about, but I think there are some really cool capabilities to it. I don't know if you have anything to add, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, personally, yes, they're really high. I mean, you see it being used for so many different things. What we have to think about in our organizations is that we don't want to lose the human touch, right? So we want to use it for increasing efficiencies and reducing those mundane tasks that we have to do. But at the same time, customers still want to talk to people. And we still need people who are ready to analyze and be able to utilize the data from AI and manage it and work alongside it. So I never view it as replacing humans. I view it as augmenting the human experience, but doing so in a reasonable manner. And I think that's why it's important to do your analysis work to see where might AI help us, or is this an overuse of AI? Checking in on the feasibility of it.
Another thing I'll add is AI, you said it earlier, knows a lot, but it's only knows what it's been trained on, right? And same thing with humans, right? We all have our biases, and biases get a bad rap, but they're not bad, right? They're just your experiences. So recognizing what the bias is, either of this AI model or of these humans on the team, right? And then challenging, okay, why are we thinking that way? What can we do differently? A lot of that is where you're gonna have to lean into the human side at the moment, right? So it's important to kind of find that balance.
You had a question?
I just wondered, you run into the situation, you were talking about AI has got to be trained, it's got to be validated. People that are doing that validation oftentimes are the people whose jobs are going to be, they're going to need to be retrained because what they were doing, they're validating a model to do it for them now instead. What kind of resistance do you get from those people and how do you address that? You've got to have them to do that validation, but at the same time, they're putting themselves out of a job. How do you get past that?
Just based on what I've seen and working with some of our clients, help alleviating those fears by helping them understand, because some of the resistance is due to fear, right? That they're working themselves out of a job. But when you can show them, instead of you doing this particular task, putting this widget over here, what we're gonna have you doing is thinking strategically and making decisions that only humans can really effectively make. Showing them the path forward as opposed to, just leaving them there in the dark and thinking they may not have a role or be able to contribute value anymore in that role. So showing them a path forward and how they're still going to be able to contribute value is important.
And to your point there, especially in the finance industry and in the commercial and corporate finance world, people want to discuss things with people. So we've incorporated a live chat feature, which, uses AI to get you your security credentials set in place through your online banking, but then it immediately transfers you over to a live person. If, maybe your commercial banker is out speaking at Georgia Tech right now, but you need a live interaction. And so, we can combine those two functionalities and then, that team can also work on something else more strategic in nature.
And one thing I'll add is that a lot of times, maybe that mundane thing that's getting trained by AI was 50% of their job. So asking that person, okay, well, what do you wish you had more time to work on that's more strategic? And then that absorbs some of that 50% that's getting replaced by AI. They have more time and they a lot of times feel more fulfillment in getting to work on more of the strategic side of things that they didn't have the time for before. So approaching it kind of more in that positive light can be helpful. It's not going to work in every case, but a lot of times it's a positive way.
Thank you.
All right, we're at time, so I just want to sincerely thank our speakers today, for taking the time to come and give us a vibrant conversation and panel discussion, so.
Thank you, ladies.
So, as far as I know, the Lunch and Learn series is over for the semester, but it will continue next spring. And I appreciate you guys' engagement. So, please stay tuned. Receive further communications in 2025 about the spring Lunch and Learn series. So we invite you to come back in the new year. Enjoy the holidays.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.